You know, when I see data like this, I start to ask myself the question, is the Silicon Valley housing market invincible? This is Danny Gould with the Selling Silicon Valley Group. Welcome everyone to another Silicon Valley market snapshot for the fourth week here in May of 2020. Lots of data to get into today, but before we go there, if you're a home seller in today's market and you're watching this video, chances are, because of the volatility in the market, the data that we're providing to you today isn't necessarily accurate for your neighborhood. So if you want a specific report delivered for your particular zip code or neighborhood, go ahead and text the word data to the number down below for a unique data set for your unique situation. And if you're a home buyer in today's market, same thing goes. Go ahead and text data to the number down below for any and all neighborhoods that you're looking in so that you get the most relevant information and see what's the competition looking like when it comes to other home buyers. What's the demand in those neighborhoods? And is there an area that may be more worthwhile for you to be looking in as opposed to some of the other neighborhoods that you're concentrated on? So lots to cover today, everyone. And wow, before we even get into the data, I wanted to share with you a headline that I saw on the Silicon Valley Business Journal. South Bay home prices are holding up, but COVID-19's impact on the market is being felt in another way. Dun dun dun. In the San Jose metropolitan area, the statistic stands out most prominently is how long it takes to sell a home these days. Compared to mid-May in 2019, the average home here now takes 10 days longer to sell, a 37% increase from last year's 27 days on the market. So they're saying now it's taking 37 days on average. Interestingly enough, you know, that data is not being reported by the MLS. The MLS data it's fake news, right? Because they pause days on market for 60 days. So somewhere they're getting that information, which is good to know. 37% is not it's not a small amount. They go on to say April unemployment reached a record 12%. However, they acquiesce that current unemployment is heavily concentrated among food service, retail, and other service workers who, because of the region's enormously high housing prices, are typically not in the home buying market under any circumstances. Very true. And at the same time, the 30% year-over-year decline in local listings is almost the same as the decline in buyers. Interestingly enough, that's exactly the statistic that we gave you on this channel last week, who've been limited in their ability to tour homes. Buyers have been limited in their ability to tour homes. Sorry, I got distracted there, my goodness. So asking prices are flat for Silicon Valley, rising only 2% over last May. But as we talked about last week, the listing prices, homes are actually being sold for more than they're being listed for. And so lots of good stuff. Guys, you know, all of this stuff here, this is literally what we've been talking about for like the last month. They're a little late to the party. And, you know, I paid $4 for this article. You guys get this stuff for free every single day. You know. Anyways, I'm getting off my high horse, but it's worth noting, everyone, that the news right now, the news flow, I've noticed that they've been a little bit more on top of it because it only took them about 4 weeks to publish this article. Whereas before it might have taken them 12 weeks or so. So some of these smaller journals, they're catching up, and they're catching up quicker. And so good for you, Silicon Valley Business Journal, for posting a good piece of information, good news for the people to understand really what's going on in the marketplace today. And since that article has, you know, since all that data from last week, things have actually gotten better for Silicon Valley real estate. And we'll go into what that means right now. If you look at the data, and every single week we've been sharing this month-to-date information. And the reason this month-to-date information is so powerful is because it really gives us an idea of how the market's behaving in real time post-shelter in place in relation to last year's market. Now, last year's market in May, what did May of 2019 look like? If you ask any real estate professional, they will say that the May 2019 market was a fairly active market, and it was a healthy market. It wasn't going sky high. We weren't seeing a ton of multiple offer situations, but we were seeing quite a few. But definitely not nearly as many as we had seen in 2017 and the early spring of 2018. When you look at these numbers here, you'll see that in Santa Clara County, okay, you see in Santa Clara County we had a 30% decrease month to date. in inventory, which is fairly stagnant when compared to last week, but a 24% drop in pendings. So we're starting to see the gap widen between pendings and inventory, and that's trending in the right way for sellers, because inventory is staying flat, but pendings are going up, and so that should be great news for you if you're a home seller, meaning that relative to the amount of relative to last year, we have more demand than supply. Should be good news, right? Now, when we kind of break that down into the two main sectors, which is the single family sector versus the condo and townhome sector, it should not surprise anyone that the single family sector is outperforming with a 19% decrease in pendings versus a 30% decrease in inventory. And so we're seeing that gap widen, or widen even more. Versus condo and townhome sector, you'll see it's a 40% drop in pendings, so there's less demand than there is supply relative to last year. And so that all balances out to the overall market looking fairly good for home sellers in Santa Clara County right now. And if you've been watching these videos for any period of time, you'll know that when shelter in place started, there was just a huge decrease year over year in both inventory and pendings. And for a while there, it was a little concerning. Like we were seeing inventory ramp up a little bit faster than demand. But now that script has flipped just a little bit, just a little tiny bit. But this is one of the first weeks that we've seen quite a sizable shift, especially in the single family sector. But if you're a home seller in today's environment, and you're a real estate agent in today's environment, I'm going out there every single day and I'm seeing what the data is telling me, which is that the market is performing exceptionally well. And that leads me to ask the question, when I see this kind of data, is the Silicon Valley marketplace invincible? I mean, this is quite amazing, all things considered. Let's consider the circumstances real quick. 8 weeks ago, the stock market collapsed, and we were sitting here just on a regular Tuesday afternoon, and all of a sudden, the Santa Clara County shuts us all down, tells us to stay inside and not come back out under any circumstances. So, I think all things considered, this is about as good as we could have expected or hoped the market to be post shelter in place. Now, if at the beginning of the year you would have told me this were the numbers, I would have, this would have been a completely different response. I would have been like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. But given the circumstances and with all the politicking and everything that's going on right now, this seems to me like best case scenario at this point. So the question is Danny, is this going to get worse at some point in time? And obviously, if I knew that with any degree of certainty, I would probably not be shooting this video right now. I'd be on CNN or something, or CNBC or whatever, right? But I'm not. So all we can do is look at the facts and try and deduce what is going to happen in the short term, and then see if those trends continue. Because frankly, last week, when we look at, shifting gears a little bit, looking at San Mateo County, I talked about the trickle-down theory in Silicon Valley, which is in the high end, in the luxury markets, in the Mid-Peninsula. We're talking big markets, Menlo Park, Burlingame, Atherton, fill in the blank here. There's Belmont. There's so many different nice, Hillsborough. There's Emerald Hills. There's so many great communities in the Mid-Peninsula. And what happens is that in San Mateo County and in parts of the Mid-Peninsula in northern Santa Clara County, Palo Alto, Los Altos, these areas tend to sort of get hit first during these types of recessions or waves of short depreciation. And we've seen it already. If you look in the last 10 years, there's been a couple of instances where the market's taken a little bit of a dip, and those areas are the first to feel it. Well, last week we saw that there was about a 10% or so decrease month to date in active inventory, right? But a 40% decrease month to date in terms of pendings. And so relative to last year, the demand was way lower than the supply. And that is not good news if you're a home seller, right? Especially if you're a home seller in San Mateo County. But if we look at the data for today, that gap has decreased substantially. So we're looking at the data. My goodness, I just had it pulled up, and this is what happens, right? 10% for sale inventory versus 30% pending. So negative 30%, negative 10%, and negative 31%. So that gap has diminished by 10%. So we're still at 10%, negative 10% year over year, or month to date year over year, but in terms of inventory, but negative 30%, meaning that the overall balance is being restored. It's certainly not there yet, but it's trending in the right direction. So both. Think about this. This is the way that we need to frame it, right? Inventory in both Santa Clara County and San Mateo County is staying fairly stagnant, right? In comparison to last year, meaning that is staying relatively even. What is increasing is the amount of demand relative to the supply year over year. And so when we look at that should be great news for you if you're a home seller. I mean that more buyers are starting to come out of the woodwork. They're peeking their heads out a little bit. Consumer confidence is coming back into the market, and that means great things for the Silicon Valley marketplace in the short term. What does it mean in the long term? Who knows? Don't ask me that. But in the short term, it's great news. When we break that down into the two sectors, to nobody's surprise, the single family sector looks pretty much even with the negative 9%, basically negative 10% in inventory as well, and negative 28.7% in terms of pendings. But then we look at the condo and townhome sector, it looks just like last week, negative 10% in inventory and a negative 43% in terms of pending. So. But when you kind of bring that all together in terms of the total package total package in San Mateo County, the net effect is that the balance is being restored slowly but surely, and the demand is what is causing that balance to be restored, or the rise in demand, right? Fascinating stuff, guys. Fascinating stuff, because by the way, if you watch my videos like 8 weeks ago, when I was talking about the doomsday scenarios that could happen here in Silicon Valley, I talked primarily about inventory levels, right? I wasn't really too concerned with the demand. I could have at some point predicted, or we could have at some point expected this resurgence in demand. You're hearing on the news right now all these companies that are offering their work from home forever, right? And I've been getting this question a lot: is what's going to happen with the work from home? And this ties into the pendings, and you'll see why, right? Because ultimately, working from home mitigates people's need or desire to live in these larger metro areas and maybe move out into the suburbs and stay there, right? And so, what's the demand going to look like once those buyers fade into the abyss? And what people are forgetting is that these sorts of institutional changes like that, I mean, they don't just happen overnight, right? And people aren't going to just like walk out of Silicon Valley. It's not going to be a mass exodus. If this happens, it might happen over a long period of time. But at the same time, there's no guarantee that these companies, never have to come back to work. There's no guarantee that they're going to pay those people the same amount. I mean, you're already seeing some companies say that we're going to prorate. We're going to prorate your pay based on the location that you're living in. And so, I'm not necessarily sold on the effects of work from home on the Silicon Valley marketplace in the long term. And clearly, all that news has done nothing but great things for demand in the short term. So, food for thought, everyone. Food for thought. All of this just kind of starts to beg the question: is the Silicon Valley marketplace invincible? And that's really what I want to hear from all of you today. Is go ahead and leave in the comments below. I want to hear do you think the Silicon Valley marketplace is invincible at this point? Because I would be interested to hear your take either way. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Anyways, everyone, like I mentioned before, if you're a home seller in today's market and you want data just like this delivered for the neighborhood that you live in, go ahead and text the word data to the number down below for a unique data set to your unique situation. And if you're a home buyer in today's market and you have questions about the market, or you're really just trying to figure out, what is it that I should be doing at this time? Should I hold off? Should I buy? These are all great questions, and it really depends on your situation. And so go ahead and text the word analysis to the number down below for a unique solution to your unique situation. This is Danny Gould, everyone, with the Selling Silicon Valley Group, and I will catch all of you in the next video.